Welcome to another edition of College Admissions Unscripted. I'm your co-host, Rob Schwartz, along with my tag team partner, Trevor Mizrahi. Today, we're talking about the absolutely insanely fun topic of standardized testing. Trev, in your experience, let me just back up a second and say, are you a fan of standardized testing in the college admissions universe?
I have to admit, I am a fan. And the reason why I like having standardized tests along with the student's entire holistic application is because it does pull out certain nuances or certain factors that elsewhere in the college application you really can't glean as much about that student. So for that specific item alone, I do like having that extra data set on a student.
Now, I'll play devil's advocate and I'll say I'm not that huge a fan, and I spent nearly a decade working in the test preparation industry, and there are so many biases within standardized testing that how much does it really tell us about the applicant? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and I think colleges are starting to see that. Clearly in this day and age of the COVID universe, regardless of where we are in that process and is it completely going away or not, colleges have been forced to reevaluate how important these standardized tests are. From the first perspective, the idea that many students couldn't access the test for almost a year. But now, as more and more doors are being opened at both SAT and ACT to taking these exams, the question becomes, do colleges need that data point? Do they need an additional data set to make an informed decision? My belief, and we'll see over time, is that fewer and fewer and fewer schools will require or even recommend these tests.
So this is where it gets a little convoluted in my eyes. So we have a really high-performing student, does really well, takes rigorous courses, has that 4.0 GPA, but when it comes to standardized testing, they just can't meet the mark. Maybe they have anxiety. Maybe they're just not really good standardized test takers. And that alone really kind of offsets where their GPA is, and having a low standardized test score does unfortunately put some students at a huge disadvantage.
Agreed. Now the opposite side of the case, the student who's kind of just pedaling through high school, I'm a 3.3, 3.4 student, I'm doing fine, but I'm not really achieving greatness, but I'm really good and enjoy the puzzles and the nuances of taking a 3 or 4 hour standardized test, and I'm actually quite good at it, which demonstrates I have the knowledge but shows that there's something else lacking in the portfolio. So both ways, giving that additional data point, to Trevor's point, allows that college or university to see both strengths and weaknesses that might not show up with only one or only the other.
Now let's talk about one huge mistake that I come across all the time, and I try to steer families away from this, which is, well, we're going to really utilize summer and all of summer to do standardized test prep. Whether that's going to a group class where when you show up late you have to write standards on the board because they take it very rigorous, or it's just you're doing one-on-one prep or using Khan Academy, whatever that is, be cognizant of utilizing all of summer is actually not the smart thing to do.
Not only is it not the smart thing to do because there are these great extracurricular opportunities that are going to allow you to really broaden who you are and help you better understand what you want to do both in college and beyond, but you don't need to take an entire summer to prep for one of these exams, especially if you're not planning on taking the test shortly thereafter. The whole idea of, I'm going to take June and July and August, I'm going to study like a madman, and I'm going to take the March SAT is idiotic. You're going to forget 90% of what you learn, and you've basically taken thousands of dollars and thrown it out the window while you're driving. So do this first. Please, humor me. Pick the date you're going to take the test first, then work backwards. Give yourself 2 to 3 months maximum of limited time per week to prepare for whether it's the SAT or the ACT. Remember, it doesn't matter which one. There's no school in the United States that will refuse your application based on you took one or you took the other.
And on that point, don't be the student who just assumes that SAT is the right test for you without even ever going through a diagnostic or being exposed to the ACT. Even though it has a science section on the ACT, you're not doing the periodic chart, you're not regurgitating what you learned in chem. It's a lot about the language of science, charts, graphs, and it's a very coachable section. But go into this knowing that most likely you're going to take a PSAT sophomore or junior year at your high school, and you should also try to get exposed to the format of the ACT.
So along those lines, understand that when families come to us and they're like, hey guys, which of these tests should we be taking and why? The easiest way for me to give you that answer is, what do you prefer? Math or English/verbal skills? For the student who's taking the SAT, it's a 50-50 proposition. 800 points math, 800 points verbal, add them together, there's your 1600. It's an even distribution. For the ACT, we have one section in math, one in English, one in reading, and one in science reasoning. And as you just heard from Trevor, the science reasoning section is more of a reading comprehension section using science lingo. It's not a math section. So when you really think of it in those terms, it's math, reading, English, reading. So almost 75% of the test is your ability to read. And generally it's, do you read well? So for those of you there who are thinking math is my strength, start with the SAT. For those of you who are thinking reading and English are my strengths, start with the ACT.
But Rob, you know that there are parents out there that have scoured the internet, read on the college's websites that they're test optional. What does that mean? What could we tell families about that?
Another one of those convoluted areas, those gray areas that have been created by COVID, really. Test optional, from my perspective, is if you have the ability to take a test, we'd like to see the test score. If you were unable to take the test, no problem. We're not going to penalize you or punish you because you didn't have access to that exam. There's schools that are now moving back to test required. There are schools that have moved into a test recommended phase where the language is very specific about if you can, you should. There are other schools that have moved the opposite direction that are now what we call test blind. Cal States and UCs this year are both test blind institutions, meaning you cannot use your standardized test score. Where do I see this going? There will be a continued push towards this test blind movement over the next 3 to 5 years. I don't think the standardized tests are going away, but they are going to be diminished in value. And I think everyone who's kind of in this industry is seeing that pattern, and a lot of people are championing that perspective. We want to see standardized tests go away. Well, do we? I don't know. Trevor seems to think there's a lot of value there. I think for the right student, there is value, which is why I actually like the notion of test optional. It gives the student the flexibility. It gives the student the option. And if they feel there's value in that standardized test, they can contribute it to the dossier. And if they feel like it's not my thing, or I don't think it's a strong enough component of my application for this school, they don't have to share it. And what is provided is what will be evaluated. I think it's a really smart move that college has made, and I hope they stick with it.
Well, this is why you're here, because we're going to give you the unvarnished truth, 2 different perspectives. You make the choice after you become a more informed consumer.
And speaking of more informed consumers, stay right there. We'll be right back in 60 seconds with Dan Seidman from Michigan State University. You're watching College Admissions Unscripted. Don't go anywhere.
College Talk is a solution to all you will need to know during the college process. It's like having a private college counselor whenever you need. There is nothing more convenient than having College Talk as a tool to keep you from making silly mistakes. Learn how to get accepted to an Ivy League university or begin a successful path from community college. Our short 3-minute informative videos will keep you on track and save you time researching on the web. Watch your college-bound student get the guidance they need through a confusing process. Take a moment to propel your college future by joining us. We are ready to help.
Back to College Admissions Unscripted. I'm Rob Schwartz along with Trevor Mizrahi.
You've arrived at the right place at the right time if you're interested in getting some great college knowledge from our special guest today. That special guest is Dan Seidman. He is the manager of West Coast recruitment for Michigan State University. Dan, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
We are honored to have you here. Let's jump right in with both feet. We're here in California, but we're clearly talking about a flagship school in the state of Michigan. Help our California viewers have a better understanding of, A, what do they need to know about Michigan State? And two, what are those sort of highlighted programs, the ones that you as a recruitment manager really want to get the message out to California families so they know, hey, if you're thinking about X, Y, and Z programs, you really need to be thinking about Michigan State.
Yeah, and I thank you for that opportunity, and I will talk about Michigan State, but I think one of the most impressive things about Michigan State University is its ability to place its people. I will tell people from California because Californians know that our public system right now is having difficulty graduating students in 4 years. And I tell people from California that number one, we will have the classes for your children to get out in 4 years. And number two, you will be able to do what you came to MSU to do. Our placement system is probably one of the best in the country. And I think it's interesting when families start to consider education and college, they always are looking at what it's going to cost me and very rarely consider the return on that investment. We can provide tremendous support for out-of-state students. We've even implemented a very unique and small program this year for Pell eligible students where they would qualify for in-state tuition. We are the only AAU school, Association of American University School, that provides in-state tuition to military dependents. I always try to explain this to California families. We do align with the UC. We are a level 1 research university. We're a member of the Big Ten, so we got that whole kind of sports thing going on there too. We are more like your UCs than we are the Cal States in spite of our name. We have almost every major that you could possibly imagine. Some of them are outstanding, and very diverse. We are diverse in the majors that we have. Obviously, as a large campus with the students that we have on campus, the environment there is very diverse. But the offerings, and that's another thing I think families should and students should consider is the major. Admissions professionals will tell you that not at Michigan State, everywhere, 3 out of 4 students change their major. And to the people that we're speaking that have gone through college now, you indeed may be one of those, one of the 75%. So what major you are looking for, and sometimes we spend way too much time shopping for a major initially, and then find out that, it was the best nursing program in the world. And so I went to that school for the nursing program. And after the first year, I decided I wanted to be a lawyer. And well, they didn't have much of a pre-law program. One of the nice things about a large public university like MSU is the number of majors that we have. And also be aware, and Michigan State does an interesting job of this too, when you're selecting majors for families, and I often say this to families coming to MSU, I like to consider being broad with your major selection early on. You don't want to look for a place that has a great pediatric surgery major if you're doing undergraduate work. You are so far away from that piece of it. Even in a more undergraduate thought, the idea of sports business. So we end up, the colleges always want to appeal to young people like sports. Young people want to get involved in business. So a lot of schools come up with this sports management program that they have. That ends up limiting you. If you keep your idea of management, business management, broad from the beginning, and then begin to focus down maybe your internships and your study opportunities would be in the sports fields, but you're not, at the end, you don't have a narrow major sports management, and now suddenly there's a management job, but it may be in the tech industry. But you emphasize it, and so you don't end up having a career opportunity as broad if you keep what you're looking to consider as a broad major.
So I think that that's very interesting, Dan. And to follow up on that, this will be more of a two-part question. One being, can you speak to how a large research university at MSU, similar to what we have here at the UCs, a lot of the discussions primarily are driven by graduate students. Most professors are tasked with doing research, let's say. So if you could mention something about that, but then also I noticed that MSU actually does a great job of sending a large number of their graduates to PhD programs, or they move on beyond their bachelor's. Can you speak to how the opportunities on campus allow for that, and what type of services are provided to students to take them to that next phase?
We have the oldest honors college in the country. So for students that find that helpful, and you're admitted to that, there's not an additional process to that. That's all part of the admissions process. You're given a second review. But to speak to your first part of that, it is our undergraduate research. We have one of the largest and again, one of the earliest undergraduate research programs in the country. And a lot of schools now, a lot of colleges are understanding that they need to appeal to undergraduates in the area of research. And so the typical undergraduate research is you're in a chemistry class and you help out the chemistry professor who invites you to do some research with him. We have that. But we also have two other elements of undergraduate research. An undergraduate at Michigan State can participate in any research in any field, even if it's not his major or if it's not his area. Now they have to qualify for it. They have to, meet with the people, and they have to be capable of doing it. It's not an automatic thing. But if you're in chemistry and there's something interesting going on in ag and natural resources, you can move into that. The third thing that we do, and this makes it very, very unique, is that we provide opportunities for students to develop their own research, and then they work with a professor, and students can get funded. I had a young woman from the Los Angeles area, from Beverly Hills High. She finished her bachelor's degree. We go back to this 4-year thing. She finished her bachelor's degree in 3 years. Now, she was somewhat unique, as you might imagine. But in those 3 years, she did 2 independent research projects. And one of them, she received a $25,000 stipend, which was part of costs, but it was also for part of her work. And the second one was a $30,000 award. So there are some things that are awarded there. And then that blends, that's the companion to our placement office. If you're in a career-based type program, an accountant, you graduate with your bachelor's degree, and yes, you may go on for a CPA, but more than likely you're going to go on to a job. But if you're in something like chemistry, environmental studies, something like that, you're probably going to want to do additional graduate research. And that is where, so our placement system helps that accountant type position. And our undergraduate research is where the students now can move on after their time at MSU.
Dan, I'm going to give you one more question here before we wrap things up. Knowing your time and your experience with the university, give me your one favorite thing about campus.
My favorite thing about campus? Okay, now that'll make me think. It is the largest, physically, it is the largest campus in the country in one place. It is very diverse. Meaning that we have 4 seasons in East Lansing, if you need to know that. So our colors are green and white, and they will tell you that in the summertime you clearly get to see where our green comes from, and then if you come back maybe around January, you get to see why our colors are white. But I think it is how you can go around campus. I mean, there's a lot of neat stuff with the camping out with our basketball coach for student tickets and that type of thing. But what I take from campus is just, again, how it has something for everybody. When you drive around our campus, you can go to our nuclear physics program is considered the tops in the country. Now that's an undergraduate program, and our cyclotron is number one. But you can then move over into the ag field. I love to be able to follow the milk from the cow to the ice cream store, where you can get our Izzo mint ice cream, and so it's all of what Michigan State has to offer, and that is what I would encourage people to do about Michigan State. You need to see it. Our neighbor down the road, there's another school in the state of Michigan and another Big Ten school. And so students will often consider visiting that school. All I ask you to do is take another hour and come up the road, and you'll see which one you feel better at and which one will work better for you.
That brings us to the conclusion of today's show. Again, I want to say thank you to Dan Seidman, manager of West Coast Recruitment at Michigan State University, for joining us. Dan, it is a pleasure as always to see you and visit with you. Thank you for imparting some wisdom to our audience today. Is there a best opportunity for a question or a concern from one of our viewers? Should they reach out to you? Should they reach out to directly to admissions? What's the best way to get some answers?
They can. The best way, I am here. I am in Southern California. So again, for our California people, please call me on Pacific time. I'm not on Eastern time, so I don't need to be, that we go through that whole kind of thing. But my email, which is my last name, Seidman @msu.edu, I'd be excited to interact with our class of 26.
Thank you again for joining us on College Admissions Unscripted. On behalf of myself, Rob Schwartz, and my tag team partner, Trevor Mizrahi, thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next time very soon.
Thanks, guys.